Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I grew up in a tiny rural town in Idaho where everyone knew everyone else's business. My graduating class had exactly 14 people in it, which should tell you how small this place was. The high school was one of those places where they cared more about sports than actual education. We didn't have foreign language classes, couldn't take math beyond basic algebra, and forget about science labs. But hey, we had a football team. The worst part about my education was the history teacher. This guy was supposed to be teaching us about the Revolutionary War, Lincoln, World War II, the Civil Rights Movement, the Cold War, all the stuff that actually mattered. Instead, he was there for one reason: to coach basketball and junior high football. That was his real job, and teaching was just something he had to do to keep his coaching position. Every single day when we walked into his classroom, he would tell us to bring something to do. That was it. That was the entire lesson plan. We never opened our textbooks. Not once. While other teachers were actually teaching their subjects, this guy would sit at his desk and we'd all just mess around for 50 minutes. It was like having a free period every day. Except we were supposed to be learning history. The most infuriating part came during finals week. The superintendent would review our test scores, so this guy had to make it look like he was actually doing his job. He would hand out the final exam and then walk over to the blackboard and write all the answers up there for everyone to see. Then he would tell us that if we were A students, we should get everything right. If we were B students, we should miss a couple questions. If we were C students, we should get about 5 wrong. Here was a grown man, a licensed teacher, telling us to fake our test scores. He was basically asking us to help him commit fraud. This wasn't just lazy teaching. This was a complete betrayal of every student in that school. He was getting paid to educate us, and instead, he was taking a year-long break at our expense. This guy taught history to every single student from 7th grade through 12th grade, and he was pulling the same stunt in every class. That meant hundreds of kids were getting cheated out of their education. Meanwhile, all the other teachers had to deal with regular audits, where educators from other districts would come review their lesson plans and observe their classes. Somehow, the coach was always excused from these reviews. When students or parents complained to the administration, nothing ever happened. After I graduated, I moved about 20 miles away and got a job as a mall Santa during the Christmas season. Let me tell you, being Santa is harder than it looks. You deal with teenagers trying to be funny, little kids having meltdowns, and parents who think Christmas is all about buying as much stuff as possible. Most kids would climb on my lap and rattle off a list of 15 to 30 things they wanted. I developed my own approach to handle this. I'd stroke my fake beard, look them in the eye with my deepest Santa voice, and tell them I'd been keeping my eye on them and had some concerns. I'd mention that their room needed attention. They could complain less when it was time to eat vegetables, and they'd been fighting with their siblings too much. The kids would look shocked, like they'd been caught red-handed. Then I'd tell them that if they worked on those things and helped their mom when she needed it, we'd see what we could do. Parents loved this approach. They'd stand there nodding and tell me to keep talking to their kids. I'd give each kid a mini candy cane and send them on their way. No promises made, but hopefully some better behavior encouraged. One Saturday afternoon, I was working my usual shift when I saw a familiar face in the line. It was my old history teacher with his 6-year-old son. They waited their turn, and eventually the little boy climbed up on my lap. He immediately started listing everything he wanted for Christmas: Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, a Nintendo, a fire truck, a bike, and more. I stroked my beard and looked at him seriously. I asked him if he'd really been a good boy this year, and he nodded. Then I asked him if he had a pony. He said no, looking confused. I told him I thought Santa needed to bring him a pony. I explained how he could ride it to school and feed it apples and carrots. I said all his friends would want pony rides at recess. I asked him what he was going to name it. The kid's eyes got huge. I could see the teacher starting to look uncomfortable, but I wasn't done. I asked if he had a BB gun and told him Santa thought he needed one. I mentioned a trampoline too. The teacher finally spoke up and told me to hold on a minute. I turned to look at him directly. He didn't recognize me with the fake beard, padded jacket, and fake eyebrows. I told him to stay out of this and that it was between me and his little boy. I called him by his first name, Tom. I went back to talking to the kid. I asked about a remote-controlled car, a computer for his bedroom, bow and arrows, and maybe a cart for his pony to pull. I promised that little boy everything I could think of. I told him about dirt bikes, video game systems, his own television, a treehouse, camping gear, sports equipment, and even a pet monkey. The kid was grinning from ear to ear, completely believing every word. I told him he would see all of that under his Christmas tree on Christmas morning. I warned him to make sure his dad didn't get up early and hide it all because he might get jealous of all the cool stuff. I suggested he figure out where he was going to build a stable and where he was going to park his dirt bike. I handed him 5 candy canes and told him to keep up the best behavior of all the kids in the world. As they walked away, I could see the teacher looking back at me, trying to figure out why I seemed familiar and what he could have possibly done to deserve this. I waved cheerfully and told him I'd see him later, using his name again. I called for the next kids in line. The look on his face was complete confusion, mixed with growing dread, as he realized he was going to have to explain to his son why Santa didn't deliver on any of those promises. For the rest of the Christmas season, I thought about that moment. I knew that come Christmas morning there would be a very disappointed little boy and a very stressed out father trying to explain why Santa had lied. I almost felt bad for the kid, but then I remembered all the students whose education had been stolen by this man's laziness and fraud. I sometimes considered stopping by the store where he worked during the summer to explain exactly why I'd done what I did. I wanted to tell him it was payback for screwing over the education of every student in grades 7 through 12 for years. But honestly, I preferred the idea of him never knowing. Let him spend the rest of his life wondering what he'd done to earn Santa's revenge. He'd stolen something from hundreds of students that could never be given back. Their chance to learn history, to understand how our country was built, to know about the struggles and triumphs that shaped our world. In return, I'd given his son one very confusing Christmas morning. It seemed like a fair trade to me. I have spinal muscular atrophy, which is a condition that affects my muscles and mobility. I've been using a wheelchair for most of my life, and while it comes with its challenges, I try not to let it define me. I work part-time at a local computer repair shop, live independently in my own apartment, and have a good group of friends who treat me like anyone else. My friend from work had been talking about this new gaming headset he wanted to buy, and Walmart had it on sale that weekend. We decided to make a trip together since he could help me carry my purchases and I could help him figure out which headset would work best with his setup. When we pulled into the Walmart parking lot in my wheelchair-accessible van, I immediately spotted an open, accessible parking space near the entrance. These spots are crucial for me because they're wider than regular spaces, allowing me to deploy my wheelchair ramp properly. On busy shopping days, finding one available feels like winning the lottery. When I drove toward the spot, I noticed a woman in a silver sedan who had been circling the lot. She was watching that exact parking space, and I could see her face through her windshield. She had this look of determination, like she had claimed that spot in her mind already. I parked my van and started preparing to get out. My friend was already unbuckling his seatbelt when I heard a car door slam nearby. My friend pointed out the lady walking over to us, noting that she didn't look happy about something. I agreed with him when I watched her approach. The woman approached us with quick, angry steps. She was probably in her 40s, wearing a tracksuit and carrying a large purse. Karen shouted at us, demanding to know what we thought we were doing in that spot. Her voice was loud and aggressive from the start. I rolled down my window and tried to keep things friendly. I greeted her politely and explained that we were just parking in the accessible spot since it was designed for people with disabilities. Karen scoffed and told us that I didn't look disabled to her. She said the whole thing was ridiculous because she needed that spot and had been there first. I've dealt with this kind of ignorance before. Some people assume that because I'm not missing limbs or don't look disabled in their narrow understanding, I must be faking it. It's frustrating, but I usually try to educate rather than argue. I told her that I understood it might not be obvious, but I did have a disability. I explained that I had the proper placard and had every right to park there. My friend tried to help by pointing out that there were plenty of other spots available if she needed to park closer to the store. Karen's expression grew darker. She looked around the parking lot, then back at us with this entitled smirk. She told us she didn't care about my placard or whatever excuse I had. She said she had been waiting for this spot and deserved it more than I did. The conversation was getting heated, and I could feel my heart rate increasing. I've learned to stay calm in these situations, but something about her tone felt different, more aggressive than usual. I tried to reason with her, explaining that I understood she might need to park close to the entrance, but these spots were specifically designated for people with disabilities. I told her it wasn't just about convenience. Karen snapped back, telling me not to lecture her about what these spots were for. She accused me of just taking advantage of the system. That's when things took a turn I never expected. Karen reached into her purse and I watched in horror when she pulled out a small handgun. My friend and I both froze. My friend shouted, asking what she was doing and telling her to put the gun away. Karen pointed the weapon at us and called me a scammer. She demanded that I get out of that spot right now, threatening us with a gun. Time seemed to slow down. I could hear my heart beat in my ears and my mouth went dry. I've faced discrimination before, but never anything like this. Never anything that put my life in danger. I begged her to put the gun down, telling her this wasn't worth it and that it was just a parking spot. Karen yelled back that it wasn't just a parking spot. She said she was tired of people like me taking advantage of things we didn't deserve. People in the parking lot started to notice what was happening. Some grabbed their children and hurried away, while others stood frozen, unsure of what to do. A few people had their phones out, hopefully calling the police. I tried to keep my voice steady, even though I was terrified. I told her that she was right, that this was serious, but not for the reason she thought. I warned her that she was about to ruin her life over a parking space. My friend was gripping the door handle, ready to jump out if he needed to, but I could see the fear in his eyes. He pleaded with her to think about what she was doing, pointing out that there were cameras everywhere. That's when I noticed two police officers who had been patrolling the lot. They must have seen the commotion because they were walking quickly toward us. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. The first officer saw Karen holding the gun and immediately drew his weapon. He commanded her to drop the weapon and put her hands where he could see them. Karen's face went pale. She looked around at the crowd that had gathered, at the officers, at the security cameras, and I think reality finally hit her. Her hand was shaking when she slowly placed the gun on the ground. The officer ordered her to step away from the weapon and put her hands behind her back. The second officer secured the gun while the first one handcuffed Karen. She kept muttering about how unfair it all was, how she just needed the parking spot, how we were the ones in the wrong. Karen continued complaining that it wasn't fair and that we were the ones taking advantage of the system. The officer told her that she had just threatened two people with a deadly weapon over a parking space and that she needed to remain silent. The officers took statements from my friend and me and from several witnesses who had seen the whole thing. They were professional and understanding, especially when I explained my disability and why I needed the accessible parking space. One of the officers asked if we were both okay and if we needed medical attention. My friend replied that we were shaken up, but okay. I told the officer that I just couldn't believe someone would pull a gun over a parking spot. The officer said that, unfortunately, they saw all kinds of situations, but that we had both handled it very well by staying calm. The Walmart manager came out to check on us and offered to let us take some time to compose ourselves before deciding whether to continue shopping. The adrenaline was still coursing through my system, but we decided to go ahead with our original plan. Life has to go on, right? When we finally made our way into the store, my friend was still processing what had happened. He said he couldn't believe that had just happened, and that she had actually pulled a gun on us. I agreed with him and told him I kept thinking about what could have happened if those officers hadn't been there. Shopping felt surreal after everything that had occurred. Every time someone approached us or looked our way, I felt a spike of anxiety. The simple act of buying a gaming headset suddenly felt insignificant compared to what we'd just survived. A few weeks later, I received an update about Karen's case. She was charged with multiple offenses, including brandishing a weapon, assault with a deadly weapon, and attempted intimidation. The Walmart security cameras had captured the entire incident, providing clear evidence of her actions. During the court proceedings, my friend and I testified about what happened. The prosecutor presented a strong case, emphasizing Karen's complete disregard for public safety and her sense of entitlement. Karen was convicted and sentenced to 2 years in prison, followed by probation and mandatory anger management classes. The judge also ordered her to complete community service focused on disability awareness and education about accessible parking rights. The whole experience changed my perspective on the everyday challenges that people with disabilities face. It wasn't just about physical barriers or lack of accessibility anymore. It was about the potential for encounters with people who feel entitled to things that don't belong to them, regardless of the outcome. But it also showed me something positive about humanity. The witnesses who stayed to help, the officers who responded quickly and professionally, and the store management who offered support all reminded me that most people are decent and willing to help when things go wrong. This happened about 5 years ago, when I was working as a newly qualified social worker. I don't do that job anymore. It was an absolute nightmare. I've been working in child protection for about 8 months at that point. The particular morning had been especially rough. I've been doing a home visit to check on a family where there were concerns about the kids' welfare. The youngest, a toddler, had been sick and managed to both spit on me and throw up on my jacket during what was supposed to be a routine check-in. It was pretty standard for the job. Kids get stressed when strangers show up asking questions, and sometimes their bodies react accordingly. Since I had court later that afternoon, I always kept a spare set of professional clothes in my car. But feeling disgusting with vomit stains wasn't exactly how I wanted to spend my lunch break, so I decided to head to my gym near the office to shower and change into something clean. I showered quickly, wrapped my hair up in one of those towel turbans, and headed back to the changing area to get dressed. The place was pretty empty except for one kid, a boy who looked about 8 or 9 years old. It was a bit odd seeing him alone, but I figured his mom was probably in the only occupied stall, so I didn't think much of it. I smiled at him politely and went to my locker to grab my clean clothes. That's when things got weird. The kid looked at me, pointed at my towel turban, and asked what it was. I explained to him that it was a towel turban and told him it was pretty neat because it stayed up better than a regular towel. He said it was cool and then started reaching toward my head. I asked him what he was doing. He told me he just wanted to see it. I told him no, that I was using it, and apologized. I'm used to kids being inappropriate. It's part of my job to teach them boundaries, but this felt different. The kid looked annoyed but went back to playing with what I assumed was his mom's phone. I got dressed quickly and moved over to the mirror area to take the turban off and dry my hair properly. I was flipping my hair around with a hairdryer when I noticed the kid kept walking up to the mirror, then leaving again. I thought he was just being curious. When I finished drying my hair and turned off the hairdryer, I reached for my turban. It wasn't there. I knew exactly what had happened. I whipped around and looked at the kid, who had turned bright red, but was staring fixedly at the phone, trying to ignore me. I'd been spat on, vomited on, and now someone had stolen my towel turban. I was done. I walked over and used my best stern voice to tell him to return the turban immediately. He kept ignoring me. I repeated my demand for him to return the turban right now. He mumbled something about not taking it, still refusing to look at me. That was it. I walked over to the occupied stall and knocked on the door. I asked if this was her son out here. The door opened and out came this woman who looked thoroughly annoyed at being interrupted. She asked what I wanted in a rude tone. I explained that this was about her son, told her he'd taken my towel turban, mentioned that I'd asked for it back but he wouldn't return it, and said that if she could ask him to hand it back, I wouldn't tell the gym staff. She asked what a towel turban was. Before I could explain, her kid piped up and told her it was a hair towel that stayed up better than a normal towel. We both looked at him. The irony wasn't lost on me. She asked what I wanted from her. I told her I wanted my towel turban back. She insisted that her son wouldn't just take something and accused me of losing it. She told me I shouldn't go around accusing people just because I lose things. I was getting really annoyed now. I suggested that he'd have no problem emptying his bag then, and said that if he had it, he could just hand it back, and if I was mistaken, I'd apologize. She looked at her kid, and it was obvious to anyone with eyes that he was lying, but she just doubled down. She called me stupid and refused to let me rummage through his things like he was some kind of thief. She accused me of harassing a little boy in a changing room. I took a deep breath to stop my eyes from rolling completely out of my head. I clarified that I wasn't asking to touch anything, just asking for her to go through his bag for my turban. I told her that if she wasn't willing, I'd go to the staff and ask them to sort this out. I know it's just a towel turban, but theft is theft. Plus, it was pink and cute and I wasn't about to let anyone have it. She accused me of threatening her. I recognized a circular argument when I heard one. I walked to the door, leaned out, and called for someone to come sort this out. A gym trainer appeared pretty quickly. He asked what was going on when he looked between the three of us. The kid had gone back to staring at the phone like it held the secrets of the universe, and his mother positioned herself between the trainer and her son like she was protecting him from a wild animal. She immediately started ranting about me being a crazy witch who was harassing her son and trying to go through his bag. She demanded that I be thrown out. I told the trainer that wasn't what happened and explained that her son had taken my towel turban and I would like it returned. I kept looking at the kid, and the trainer turned to him and asked what happened and whether he'd taken the towel. The kid mumbled something incoherent, and his mother jumped in immediately. She insisted he hadn't taken it and claimed he was so traumatized he could barely speak. She bent down and hugged him dramatically, telling him it would be all right and that she wouldn't let me get away with this. The whole performance was worthy of a daytime soap opera. I looked at the trainer and explained the whole situation clearly. He suggested we just check the kid's bag. The kid started wailing like someone had told him Christmas was cancelled, and his mother started ranting about harassment again. The trainer looked uncomfortable but told her that checking the bag was the only way he could solve this. The mother tried to push past me, but the room was small and I wasn't moving. She started swearing and thrust the kid's backpack at the trainer. She told him to check it, insisted her son hadn't taken anything, and demanded that when he didn't find it, I should be thrown out and made to apologize, and that he should get the manager. The kid wailed even louder. The trainer unzipped the bag and there it was. My pink, wet towel turban sitting right on top of everything else. He picked it up and just stared at it for a moment. The kid wailed even more and tried to grab it, but the trainer held it out of his reach. The trainer asked if it was mine. I confirmed it was and thanked him. I stuffed the turban into my bag and got out my car keys and ID lanyard. When I put the lanyard over my head, I heard something audibly click in the mother's brain. She was staring at my social worker identification badge. Her entire demeanor changed in an instant. She grabbed her kid's arm, snatched the bag from the trainer, and I moved aside to let her pass. She practically sprinted out of there, dragging her confused son behind her. The trainer looked completely puzzled by the sudden exit. He said it was weird and guessed she was just embarrassed that her son stole my towel thing. I nodded and agreed, but I knew the real reason she'd bolted. She'd suddenly realized what my job was and that her son was out of school during school hours, stealing pink towel turbans from strangers in gym changing rooms. The last thing any parent wants is a social worker taking note of their parenting skills, especially when their kid just got caught red-handed stealing. I finished gathering my things and headed back to the office, pink towel turban safely in my possession. That afternoon's court session went smoothly, and I even managed to dry my hair properly thanks to getting my turban back. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.